Hi, I'm Teresa.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Chuck, and welcome to our videocast, Takingdiabetesheadon.com. Our topic today is cholesterol and the low down on lipids. Teresa, will you introduce the lipid clan and the members of that family to our audience?
Sure. The major lipids in our circulation are cholesterol and triglycerides. Among the cholesterol clans are the LDLs and the HDLs. And in addition, there are less known fractions. By the way, LDL stands for low density lipoprotein, which is the lethal bad cholesterol, and the HDL stands for the high density lipoprotein.
That's so good, Teresa.
Which is the healthy and good cholesterol.
That's good. Good to know because patients always say when they go to their provider and the provider orders a lipid panel, Chris, what are they getting?
Basically, when their healthcare provider orders a lipid panel, really what you're getting a lipid panel. So you get a total cholesterol, your HDL cholesterol, and your triglycerides. And remember, from that, we're actually calculating a LDL cholesterol, and that's the bad cholesterol, since the formula for calculating LDL, we all know, depends on triglycerides. You need to make sure that you're fasting for at least 10 hours because remember, triglycerides are mostly affected by food and your diet. So that's something that I think we need to really look at, especially when your healthcare provider is ordering a lipid panel.
That's very important because the LDL that is given to us in the lipid panel is a calculated LDL. So he's mentioned a bunch of terms. Teresa, how would you place the hierarchy and importance of these various lipids?
Well, first, I think it's important to look at the LDL cholesterol, then the triglycerides, and then the third, the HDLs, the good cholesterol. In addition to the calculations, they also automatically calculate which is the non-HDL cholesterol, which has been known to show better predictors of cardiovascular risk than calculating just the LDLs. And also, they calculate the LDLs with the HDL ratio. And when you look at these lipid panels, it'll assess the risk of what's your risk for cardiovascular.
That's great because it looks at it through different prisms. And each one of this in its own way is a way to give us information about risk. And you brought the R word, the risk.
The risk.
And the risk is very important because all of this revolves around looking at what is the patient's risk for developing various cardiovascular disease.
That's important.
That's important. And another way to look at this is looking at this as atherosclerosis, which is a process happening in the blood vessels over the time. It's a very complicated process, and one of them involves the LDL cholesterol.
Absolutely.
The ultimate effect of all this is to form plaques. And plaques, by virtue of their structure, they block. They block blood vessels that go to the heart, leading to a heart attack. They block the blood vessels going to the brain, leading to a stroke. And they block the blood vessels going to the limbs, often leading to what they call ischemia and circulatory problems. So the reason lipids are important is because they participate in this atherosclerotic process.
Wow. You know, truly, this is so true, Dr. Cannon. Not all cholesterol truly is created equal. Remember, the LDL cholesterol is really, truly, indeed, the big bad wolf that they all speak about. But really, truly, with that, no, we have to know that the HDL is the good cholesterol. So you have the big bad wolf, you have the good cholesterol, which is not the bad wolf. So sometimes we think of this as the angel and the devil. And really, we have to understand that good cholesterol is important because eventually good cholesterol really is protective and it will move cholesterol away from other tissues and really disposed of eventually from the body. And really, the higher the LDL, the higher risk factor for cardiovascular events. But with that being said, not all people with high LDL will have a cardiovascular event, and not all people with cardiovascular events have high LDL or the bad cholesterol. So really what we have to look at here is the total cholesterol along with the LDL, the HDL, and other risk factors. But really, with this, we have to understand the LDL and the HDL. Sometimes we call these the yin and the yang of nature. And with that being said, it's kind of like I said, the devil and the angel. We don't know really, is it the devil or the angel that protects us or causes the problem, but what we do know is the devil truly is in the details.
It's very true, and it's the eternal conflict between good and evil, from what you're saying.
Yeah.
But then you talked about this balance of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Why would nature in our system introduce over the years and over millennia good cholesterol and bad cholesterol? And why do we have cholesterol at all, Teresa?
Well, we need cholesterol for several good things. It serves as a substance, or more correctly, as a substrate for producing important hormones like the sex hormones, and we know that's a good thing.
Oh, you told me you weren't going to say that word.
Cholesterol is also involved in the cellular functions like metabolism and membrane stability. Triglycerides are stored in the fat for a rainy day and serves as an important role for glucose needs in certain situations.
Wow.
So they do serve a purpose.
Absolutely.
And nature intended this to be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Over the years, of course, things have evolved, and people always think it is all coming from the food. So, Chris, what is the origin of cholesterol?
This is a kind of a confluence of two rivers. It's really truly the exogenous and the endogenous, or from without and from within. So really our body gets its cholesterol from outside sources. So the exogenous sources are things such as high cholesterol foods, such as red meat, dairy, eggs. But then also, with that being said, our own body makes cholesterol. And really, the food that we eat makes that triglycerides, that fatty acid, so to speak. When we have that, really, what we understand is that this is absorbed through the intestines, the small intestines, and then enters the circulation. But the triglycerides, they go through the lymphatic system. And when they go through the lymphatic system, really what happens is this is the way that our body will produce some through the liver, and then we get some from outside. But these fats don't mix well with the blood, so they actually have to have carrier proteins. And these carrier proteins, a carrier protein with that cholesterol that comes from animal can turn into the animal fat, so to speak, turn into these things that we call the big bad cholesterol or that devil, so to speak. And while the HDL is truly the good cholesterol, the thing that separates them is their carrier proteins called the apoprotein, the APO protein. And with that being said, we really truly have to understand that process so that we'll know how to treat it.
So this is kind of interesting because in of itself, cholesterol can turn into good or bad,
Absolutely.
depending upon who it's running around with. And the company it keeps define who you are.
Yeah.
So that's good to know where they come from. But how are they disposed of, Teresa? Can you give us a clue on that?
I can. And the body is a fascinating thing. It does so much. Some of the cholesterol excreted through the bile into the intestines, but the most is eliminated through the liver. The LDL binds to the LDL receptors, and then it gobbles up all the LDL, degrades it, and then makes it disappear. It's like Pac-Man, where the LDL receptors chews up the LDL and spits it
So
out.
how could you see it?
Just like that.
Well, that's excellent.
But that said, a good chunk of it is coming from the diet.
Absolutely.
And even though the bulk of cholesterol and LDL are produced in our bodies, there is still a sizable that comes through nutrition.
It truly makes sense. So sometimes what happens is we have to find a way to diminish the absorption through dietary restriction, as well as drugs that limit that absorption of cholesterol. But also, then second, what we have to do is give medications that inhibit the enzymes that are involved in cholesterol synthesis. And this is truly done by the liver. And the enzyme goes by a long name, CoA reductase. And really, a popular class of drugs that we all know and hear all the time called the statins, they work by inhibiting this enzyme. And when they inhibit this enzyme, truly this becomes the first line of attack against LDL cholesterol. So the first line of drugs that they even say in people with diabetes, if you have high cholesterol, high LDL, high risk factors, you're over 40, you should be on a statin. And some people think statins should be in the water.
Thank goodness.
True, that is.
Because every drug has, of course, a downside to it,
Absolutely.
as we'll discuss it. But here's an important thing. Many patients say, oh, should I eliminate all food in cholesterol? And if you do that, is it going to work to treat you? What do you think about the component of nutrition?
Well, the nutrition accounts for the
20%,
20%,
perhaps?
and it's a good chunk. So we have to be careful not overeating red meat, dairy, or eggs. So, I mean, because you need cholesterol for basically for your body to produce. You need like 200 milligrams a day, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
It's just about right. And does this mean we have to completely forget breakfast with eggs and bacon and cheese?
No. You just have to watch.
Teresa and I were actually at a store yesterday, and a guy wore a shirt, and it says, "Bacon is the meat candy." And so, of course, people think that they have to have bacon. That's part of one of their food sources, but I think cholesterol is probably going to raise. What do you think?
Well, I think moderation in everything is a good motto to keep, and certainly we advise our patients, try to limit your cholesterol intake. But here is a clever thing which our bodies do. If you completely eliminate all sources of dietary cholesterol, your liver produces it with a vengeance to provide you with more and more LDL. So actually it's not a good idea to totally eliminate all dietary cholesterol, but you limit it to about 100 to no more than 200 milligrams a day.
Wow.
This is important because, like diabetes, nutritional therapy is there as an infrastructure, no matter what drug we use.
Absolutely.
So this is kind of important, and most of our patients do need to spend a little time talking about nutrition with their dietitian or with their provider, so they get an idea as to what to avoid.
Dr. Cannon, we've truly talked so much about LDL, HDL, this calculated number, etc. today. But truly, in your career, you always tell me how young and vibrant you are, which you are beyond. And
you are too kind.
With that being said, when I was thinking about this, in your career, you've been a doctor for a long period of time. Have you truly witnessed cholesterol story from its infancy to where we are now? And can you give us some insight on the evolution that we're seeing today? Because some of these drugs, when you first started practicing, they weren't around. Is that correct?
That is very true. And over the last 4 decades, this has gone from an evolution to a revolution. In fact, not too many people had even heard about this connection in the early 60s. The story of cholesterol actually started in the 60s, late 60s, in a small town in Massachusetts called Framingham.
You won't believe this, but Teresa and I visited Framingham, and today I had a patient that came to see me
Framingham?
from Framingham. Absolutely.
Wow, it's a small world.
Framingham, Massachusetts is a small community and sort of became the center for epidemiologists to look at lifestyle. What does good healthy eating do? What does exercise do? How does this translate into heart attacks? And what they found, they reported first a link between people in Framingham developing heart attacks and their cholesterol levels. Those days they had no clue. Good cholesterol, bad cholesterol, ugly cholesterol, nobody had a clue. But they reported these findings and decided to continue following them. Within a few years, in the early 70s, 7 other countries, including 5 European, United States, and Japan, provided similar data, and they were the first to delineate what norms are. We had no clue what a normal cholesterol is, and how do you find out a normal cholesterol? So they defined what a normal level is, and what level begins to lead you to have risk. And that's where we got the often mentioned total cholesterol of 200 or less is desirable.
Okay.
As time went on, cholesterol now was gleaned into its components, subfractions. They understood good cholesterol and what it does, how it's removing cholesterol away, and bad cholesterol, which is depositing cholesterol into tissues. So HDL and LDL and other lipoproteins and triglycerides found the way into our vernacular in the 70s. Around 80s, one started looking at would lowering cholesterol matter? And that was the time when the birth of a class of drugs called statins flooded the scene. And in the 90s, newer statins were devised, and they provided the first credible data that there is prevention possible. And they showed that people with one heart attack often get a second one soon, but that can be diminished and sometimes prevented by the way of bringing down the total cholesterol.
Wow.
And over the years, and in the last 20 years, newer, stronger, more powerful statins have been devised, and now we have overwhelming data that lower is better.
Absolutely.
So we have seen this evolve over 40 years, and I think the biggest change in epidemiology is understanding that we can change. Of course, this is not a one-dimensional thing. You've got to lose weight, you've got to eat right, you've got to stop cigarettes, and you have to treat diabetes well. And bringing diabetes into the picture, the National Cholesterol Education Program has given us some guidelines. And perhaps, Teresa, you can point out what these guidelines are.
I can. Well, just like your A1C should be customized to that person by your doctor. In general, people with diabetes that doesn't have any cardiovascular disease, the LDL goal is less than 100. And if you have a history of heart attack, stroke, peripheral artery disease, which is PAD, your goal should be less than 70 for LDLs. Your triglyceride goal should be less than 150, and the HDLs, which is the good cholesterol, is recommended above 40 for men and 50 for women.
Wow.
You have very clearly outlined the general way in which we proceed, but this changes every 3 years. And now very many cardiologists have latched on to the lower is better, aiming for even 50 or below. But then again, the recommendation is exactly what you mentioned. So what do we do in terms of wanting to achieve these goals?
I think with like you guys talked about, diet, exercise, the blood sugar, and then starting a statin. I think that truly is important.
And a little bit for our audience about the safety of statins?
Basically, most important thing that someone needs to know is sometimes a person gets some minor muscle aches. That's no big deal, but truly there's a thing called, there's muscle damage that can occur called myopathy. To the point it can get so bad that you can get a severe myopathy in which these proteins from the muscles are broken down. They block the kidneys, and when that occurs, it's a rare event, but this is called a statin rhabdomyolysis. And when this occurs, truly, it's a medical emergency. However, it's so rare that we don't see it. So theoretically, if your physician is watching or your healthcare provider is watching your liver enzymes and you report any adverse symptoms, you should never have that problem. So I don't think you should be scared of a statin.
But you know what's interesting though? My mom, she is on a statin, and she was on Lipitor, and with Lipitor you can't take it with grapefruit.
Yeah, and she
used
ended
up
a lot
with
of grapefruit.
Rhabdo. She had her enzymes went up, and she didn't know she couldn't drink with grapefruit because my mom loves fruit, and she had lots of and nobody told her, hey, if you're on Lipitor, do not have grapefruit. And that's
how close to home
Yes.
this has hit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. I never knew that you can't have grapefruit with
that's the
Lipitor.
interaction.
Right, interaction that causes
so many
bloating.
drugs interact with statins.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So the healthcare provider and the patient often needs to tell
But
what they're taking.
But I think the important point here is that they're relatively safe with no major issues except in certain cases, and then we would pull you off a statin and use something else, I'm assuming is what we would do.
She is. She's just not on Lipitor, that's all.
Well, again, this goes to history taking and goes to time spent describing things.
Absolutely.
I've also had patients ask me, do statins cause diabetes to happen?
Teresa and I have had people ask that.
And in our support group.
So what is the answer, Dr. Cannon?
There is a link, and in these large-scale trials where people without diabetes have been studied, there is a small increase in the incidence of developing diabetes. But like everything else, if you look at this minor issue with the larger picture of risk reduction after a heart attack, you weigh the good with the bad. And if you're already a person with diabetes who already is on medication, then the impact on the glucose is very minimal because other things have taken over a larger impact on it. So I think we talk about this in people who don't have diabetes and watch them, but this is no reason to withhold it from when it's required.
Yeah.
And they should do modifications, lifestyle modification, diet, exercise. I think stuff like that will definitely help with the cholesterol.
And this is about living a long, healthy life with diabetes, and that's all it really is.
And I think in a multi-layered framework of treatment, treating lipid disorders in diabetes is a very, very crucial aspect of care. And that, I think, brings us to the end of our discussion.
I think so. I think we did.
And thanks for watching. I'm Chuck.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Teresa. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We love hearing from all of you, so please feel free to email us. And don't forget to visit our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages, as well as our website.